Hi, I'm going to walk you through how to set up your technology page and begin your research. First thing you should do is go to your digital science notebook and I want to make sure that you have your technology page created. Over on the right, if you ever in case see your page is set up like this, and you're like, oh no, where'd my introduction page go? Remember, you got to use these little drop down arrows to show you your sub pages that you've created. If that's ever happened. All of our journal entries, again, should be in this separate page. So far, I have my separate introduction page and you have all your details down here. You should have created your scale model and put your image here. This is an example from last year. So remember, you're not going to be creating subpages of your subpages. You have to create subpages of your main page. So you can click three dots, add subpage. I'm titling this technology. I've gotten on my soapbox about making sure we have capitals for all of our page titles. It looks better. It looks more professional. So these should not be lowercase. Technology. Next document that you should have open, if you go into Google Classroom and you open up your solar system website work doc, you're going to scroll down to this section, part 2, technology. So our main goal here is, we always see these beautiful images and we collect all this data about our planets, like, Venus. Oh my goodness, it's like 800 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface. Oh my, it's crazy conditions across the solar system. How do we get that information? And as we've talked about in class, we utilize pieces of technology as in space probes that we send out there. So you're going to research how scientists were able to gather information about these objects, describe missions and or pieces of technology that were used, include important discoveries if available. Okay, so this should, again, like our introduction, be written in short paragraphs. Captions are useful when you're including images. Now, you may be using similar sources like nasa.gov or that NASA solar system site. So I included spaces down below if you found new links. So if you're still using like NASA solar system, that's fine. You don't, I had you include those in your introduction section, like right up here. So if you're using that site again, you don't have to duplicate it down here. Okay, but if you find new ones, please include those links in the information you found there. I want you to, because there could be dozens of missions. Like Mars, for example, has lots of them. The moon has dozens of missions. I don't expect you to include all of them. I want you to include at least 3. That's why I have 3 different boxes here. Okay, and then what did you learn or discover when it comes to those objects? If you want an advanced score, meaning a 4 in your tech page, really, again, going above and beyond in detail, you have multiple paragraphs on several different probes. So if you just do like one space probe per object, that's not going to get you a 4. I know that there are some objects that maybe there is only one. Okay, and for that instance, when I think of objects that only have had one object discovering them, like Ceres, for example, the Dawn spacecraft is the only one that's been there. Okay, well, go above and beyond when it comes to the Dawn spacecraft. You could also create, again, like a video that you've made, like up in the intro section. Some of you did that. You could also provide a supplementary YouTube clip. I shouldn't see like 60-minute documentaries on that. That doesn't suffice. Or you could create your own little slide presentation to include. Okay. Now, I've also included in the Google Calendar, for whichever class you're on, a technology website link. Click on that. It's going to take you here. So instead of just Google searching things like missions that went to Mercury, I have many of the primary missions here for you. Now, when you look at this, just let's say if you're doing Mercury, I only have 2 missions listed because there's really only been 2 missions that have gone to Mercury, not that many. If you ever see an asterisk next to that mission, that's one that you really should be talking about. Some of the planets, if we look over at Mars, have multiple. I thought it did. Never mind. I have multiple ones, but definitely you need to talk about this one in addition to, hopefully, if your planet has multiple probes that have gone to them, at least 3. So notice Venus is 3. You should really be talking about these. Okay. Now, I have some hyperlinks here. Now, if there's a hyperlink on a planet or an object, where that's going to take you is back to NASA solar system. And if you scroll down, it's going to talk about or list the missions that have been there. So I'd clicked on Mercury, click on that. It gives you information on the Messenger probe, for example. It'll give you what it was, what it learned, and the scientific instruments that were on it. I would want you to do a little research about what some of these scientific instruments did. Now, some of these craft have, dozens of experimental scientific things on it. You don't have to go into like incredible detail on them, but it's important to mention these and what they helped us learn about Mercury, for example. Okay, also then you'll talk about experiment on Mariner 10. What'd that learn? Now, not all of these objects have hyperlinks next to them, which is why I tried to include specific links here. So for Earth, for example, oh gosh, hundreds of different scientific missions to study our own planet. These are some of the big ones. Notice there's a complete listing of missions down below. If there's a link here, particularly for planets, that's a listing of every single space probe that has like ever been sent there. Again, if you click on Mercury, it's going to take you to a Wikipedia link. And you're to click on missions. Essentially, like I said, Mariner 10, Messenger. That's pretty much it. Mercury is not a super exciting place, which is why not a lot has been researched or sent there. If you go to Mars, for example, if you were to click on Mars mission listing, now this list is extensive. Click on missions. Every one of these is a spacecraft that was either planned, sent to, or attempted to be sent to. I think it's fascinating. Early in the the 60s and 70s, look at all the failures. Launch failure, launch failure. And you have an occasional success. And gradually over time, we get better luck. And the Soviet Union is not the only country to have failed missions. The United States, they end up failing. If we look at Mars Observer, failed in the 90s there. So many of them. Again, I don't expect you to talk about all of them. Hopefully, at least for planets that have a lot of missions, at least 3. Which is why I listed some of the most important ones here. Definitely if you're doing Mars, talk about at least one of the rovers that are here. This is the one that is en route to Mars right now. But the MRO, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, is big. I also listed like the first to get there. If you want to include that just for fun, that's fine. Outer planets, again, I have these linked here. It'll take you, if I were to click on Saturn, it takes you to solar system exploration and the main missions that have been there. Okay, NASA provides good information, basics right there. Or again, you can go to like the complete mission listing. But if you're doing moons or some other object, I included dwarf planets on here. You'll see if you're doing like Eris, Haumea, Makemake, some of these have not been identified by space probes. They've been identified by telescopes, which is why I included links for the Palomar Observatory or the Sierra Nevada one. For Ceres, you only have Dawn, that's it. Dawn's a really interesting spacecraft, so talk to us a lot about that. Now, some of the outer planets, see, even like Pluto, or if I go back to Uranus, Neptune, they've only really had 2 space probes explore them. That's it. Even though they're very large planets, they're in our solar system, not a lot has been there. So you'll have to go into depth about 2. Saturn, you need to be talking about Cassini, big time. Even if you're doing Titan, you need to be talking about Cassini and the Huygens probe. If I look on these others, now if you're doing moons, particularly very small moons, let's say if you're doing Phobos and Deimos of Mars, or if you're doing one of the moons of like Neptune or Jupiter, you're going to find a lot of your information by looking at these craft right here, because as those craft went to Uranus and Neptune, they also took shots of the moons as well. So what we know about, thinking about, I think is what's moon of Uranus, Miranda, you'll be needing to talk about Voyager 2 and the Hubble Space Telescope. Same goes for like if you're doing any of Jupiter's moons or like any of Saturn's moons, you'll be looking at technology that also studied those planets. Okay, so notice for all of Jupiter's moons, the Galileo space probe is very important. Especially like Europa, there's some cool future missions going there. Make sure you talk about the Europa Clipper. There's probably going to be some cool stuff that goes to Io. And that's kind of all I've listed. If your objects are a little bit more obscure and aren't listed on here, you may be able to find some information on NASA's solar system, but I think I included most objects on here. Again, I don't have the random moons of Uranus and Neptune, which is why you'll need to be researching these craft right here. I'm hoping this at least gives you a decent starting point. Again, in review, you'll be pretty much putting some of the primary missions. If there are more than 3, you don't have to do more than that. 3 is kind of the max. Now, what other past websites have looked like? So here's one from last year. You're thinking, okay, how are these going to be scored? This was a particular text section for Venus. Now, images, great. They have at least 3 craft, great. And another thing on Venera, if you're doing Venus, there are multiple Venera missions. Venera means Venus in Russian. Focus on some of them that made milestones. I forget, I think it's Venera 7. Venera 7 was the first one to actually land on the surface. This provides some decent introduction information on what the craft did, but it doesn't tell me anything about doesn't tell me about the tools that the craft had. That's why I want you to dig a little bit deeper. So this would be this is like a 2, almost 3 text section. Images, it's well organized. I like that. But let's take it a step further. Now, this particular one does some of the same thing. It's organized nicely, good use of visuals. It tells me a little bit about what the craft discovered, which is good. This one's also on Venus, as you can see. But again, it doesn't tell me what some of the specific tools were that the craft had. Okay, this one has more detail and what it discovered, which is great. So this is kind of like the next step up. This would be like a high 3. Okay? And this is another one where, let's say if I took this stuff that I learned about this object, a little bit more detail, and then I included, if we look at this one, this was for Pluto and the New Horizons craft, it reviews a little bit what the specific instruments were. So I like this image in the background that has like some of the specific instruments that went by names like Alice, Ralph. Okay. And it tells me what they did instead of just, well, it learned this. Tie in both of those things and you have a great technology page. So if you have questions, give me a holler. I hope that gives you a good start. And always make sure click publish.